Ed here with the Digital Digest, and I wanted to share an update on my experience with the Samsung Galaxy Fold, because this is a revolutionary product. I've had a little bit of time to spend with it, not a tremendous amount, but enough to give you initial impressions. First and foremost, the front display gets a lot of flack, a lot of criticism for not being larger, and I understand why. You're spending $2,000. This is not what phones look like today, but phones also obviously don't look like this. And that's a big deal. And I haven't customized, but I've been using the phone while charging it up at the same time. And I am thoroughly impressed with it. And that's because this is a first-gen device. And what Samsung has done a really great job with is giving you something unlike anything else on the market. Now, I don't think this is for everybody. No way. And not because of its price point. We already know its fragility. How much you have to take care of it and make sure that you do not damage it puts it in a class of its own, as does its foldable capability, as does its price point. But what's really interesting about the Fold is something like this. You're using what I call the preliminary display, the display that permits the Fold to remain a candy bar, and then this simply, you're working with a seamless transition to what traditionally would be reserved for a tablet. And this is what makes the Fold so unique. And I mean, the speed of the device is right on par with what I get out of my Note 10 Plus, and that's because the internals are virtually identical. The difference is, of course, that I have to be more careful with the Fold. And when I say careful, when I first started using it, I knew that I couldn't put a nail to this display because it can scratch it. Anything that has a sharp edge can scratch this. And by sharp edge, I don't mean a knife. I mean anything. Now, I forgot for a moment there. I didn't scratch it, thankfully. But it's something where the awareness, what I'm accustomed to, that's something I have to graduate to with this device. And it's part of the learning curve of having a new generation of technology. And that's not to say that Samsung at some point won't have the ability to integrate a Corning glass layer here of protection rather than the substrate of plastic that we have to utilize because of its fold ability. But the concerns that I have really, so far, I think it's really just a matter of getting accustomed to using it. And durability, of course, we'll only know over the course of time, but so far, what I've seen is impressive stuff. I like the keyboard layout here. Of course, you can customize this and make it just a full-size keyboard if that's what you prefer, but the split, I think, makes sense for people with normal-sized hands. You want to have a split in the text. Makes perfect sense for the form factor. The cameras, having 3 on the back, 2 here, and then 1 at the front display, you're not going to find another camera. Excuse me, you see what it's doing to my brain. You're not going to find another phone that has that many cameras. So Samsung has accommodated every single angle. The build quality feels very substantial. So the idea that it's a little bit ironic that this thing is so fragile and yet it feels kind of like a brick house. This screen we know is not, but you have to be gentle with it. And again, that's something that I think users will become accustomed to because it is the beginning of a new era in terms of mobile phones. I don't think this is just a gimmick. I think this is where things are headed because, just continuously making larger phones that are impractical and that you can't use one-handed has been a complaint of mine for quite some time. The fact that now you can type out anything you want, go over to Engadget, which, some people like, some people don't like. I'm not trying to give them street cred because God knows they've changed hands enough times over the years. But this thing just works beautifully. I've got the Tab S6 in-house right now, and this seems to perform better, even though it's working with the same hardware. Of course, more RAM, 12 gigs here. I do have the 8 gig version of the Tab S6 coming. But, I mean, everything here is butter. And it's a phone, but it's a tablet. It's an e-reader. It's anything you want it to be. I mean, if you want this for e-reading, it's perfect. Think about it. It's the first time that a phone, in my opinion, it can double as an e-reader. It can double as a tablet. It can do all of those things. Do I see some issues? Yes, of course. This is not a perfect product. The fact that it is so fragile is a big problem inherently, because I think the vast majority of people that are going out there and purchasing it aren't necessarily going to just be tech enthusiasts that need or want the bleeding edge, and so they are going to make sure they don't damage this. I think they're going to predominantly be people who think it's really cool and they've got the budget. Those people are going to break this phone. It's going to happen. I know it already. And I can't blame Samsung. This is a Gen 1 product that they already had to fix before its launch. So with that in mind, I think it's relevant to note that it shouldn't be on a user to make sure they don't destroy a device, but when we're, stepping into a new realm of tech, it's part of the territory. Will they probably get this rectified in Gen 2? I would imagine so. I'm not sure exactly how, but maybe the plastic substrate changes and is more resilient. It likely will be. And that's what I can say about that. And I think that's where we're going to have a completely different device. Now, in terms of their adaptation of the apps working, functioning with the Fold, they've done a really good job. And I think Samsung deserves a tremendous amount of credit, not just for creating a device like this, but leading mobile software in this direction, because they are paving the way for the rest of the manufacturers out there. The learning curve is here. Other manufacturers are going to copy, imitate, the highest form of flattery, right? But Samsung's done it. And people who complain about this notch, holy notch is all I'm going to say. We've been dealing with notches on $1,000 plus phones since Apple made it acceptable for quite a while. I've got a pinhole in my Note 10 Plus. Do I think that's okay? No. Do I think it's one of the best looking and overall performing phones on the market other than this? Yes. No question about it. And that's why this stands up, because this is something I can't do with my Note 10 Plus. Of course, I'm missing my pen. I'm missing additional storage with a micro SD card slot, but otherwise, this is just my Note 10 Plus in the form factor I wish my Note 10 Plus was in. And the weight is not an issue. It just makes it feel more substantial. And once it's in your pocket, I don't see that being any sort of impediment. And just, for the sake of parody, I'll even bring up state television. And this is really just an amazing product. I knew it was going to be from launch. I was waiting for something like this to come out. I've been following OLED tech since the early 2000s, late 90s. It was what I invested in the stock market. And folding screens was always one of the beautiful things that OLEDs could accomplish. And the fact that now we're in 2019 and I'm sitting here sharing with all of you a phone that folds and has a seamless 7.3-inch display. Yeah, it has a crease. You can feel it, but you can't see it. And you really got to mess with it. Fantastic. I have nothing negative to say about this. This is crazy. And I think that for a first-gen product, Samsung's getting more flack than they should. They should be getting praise. And I'm not sure why they only allow 3 apps of multitasking at the same time, as opposed to 4, because I feel like 4 could fit on here. I haven't, done the research. I'll, of course, have the answer probably in the next video. And some of you watching already know. I just haven't had the time because, as I mentioned in my unboxing, I was driving almost the entire day in order to put this in my hands to share with all of you and for my own enjoyment. I'm not going to deny that for a moment. The cameras, having all this flexibility and having this large display for the cameras, it's here I am. Hey, what's going on? It's just nuts. It's nuts. There's nothing negative so far outside of the fragility. So let's speak to that fragility, okay? As I mentioned earlier, I think the majority of people that can afford this aren't necessarily going to treat it with the care that it needs. Do I think it's ridiculous that it cannot be in a pocket with credit cards because of the magnets? Yes. Do I think it's ridiculous that if you have an implanted medical device like a pacemaker, it could interfere with? Yes. But that's something new when it comes to magnets. It's not like Samsung made this problem. They had to, it was part of their engineering. It's not a new thing. The spine, if it actually holds up the way that Samsung is claiming it will, you're looking at the future. It won't look exactly like this, but you better believe it will resemble it. It'll get thinner. It'll probably get pen input. It will get a larger front display. Cameras will improve. I don't think they'll necessarily give us a micro SD card slot because they don't need to. Because there's nothing else to compete with this. As I've mentioned, the cameras are on par. They're the exact same cameras that you, at the system at least, the number not, that you have with the S10 and Note 10 lineup. So that's not different. But the experience is. And there's nothing wrong with the experience on the S10 or the Note 10. So now give it a bigger screen, but yet the ability to still fit comfortably in your pocket and the ability to still make phone calls like a normal human being on here. And it's just another world of device, in my opinion. And to the critics that have basically been mocking it, saying, you know, you're stepping back in time. It's not waterproof, dustproof. I understand all of that. And I agree that I wish it were. That's a constraint or a restraint of the technology we're dealing with. You want a folding phone? You can't have waterproof. You can't, there's no such thing as perfect in this world. Let's all try to remember that. And so I'm not making excuses. I would love for this to be waterproof and have dust resistance, all of those things. I would love for the screen to be more resilient and more scratch proof. But that's not where this tech is at yet. So if you're buying into it, you have to be willing to participate in the experience knowing that you're not going to achieve those things. It's just not possible yet. In the same vein, what you are getting is fairly amazing. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I really do. So while it's easy to criticize a device like this and say, well, it's missing the following, and you've got to treat it like a baby, show me any phone where you're going to get this build quality, this experience, and I know what's coming from China. I know what's in the works. I know what Huawei has. I know the Mate X is coming. They are not going to have the support and build quality that Samsung does. Watch. Remember that I've said it. They're going to imitate it. They're going to do a decent job. They'll probably undercut pricing or meet it. But at the end of the day, Samsung's support and their offer to replace the screen, which, by the way, I think is more about Samsung now understanding that the general public isn't going to be careful enough with this. Maybe once they break the screen once, they will. But, I mean, the whole idea that people are complaining that this has to have its own pocket, its own space, I don't know where you've been living, but I don't put anything in the pocket my phone is in. I haven't for years, even with a case on it, because I'm not trying to damage the camera assembly, anything that is exposed in spite of whatever case I have on it. So the end result is that I'm already accustomed to my phone occupying my left pocket. Now pickpockets know where to go if they ever meet me on the street. Not meet me, but try to rob me. The whole point is that I'm used to that. Now, the dust-proof, water resistance, and babying it, like I said, first time I went to use it, for a second I forgot, and my nail touched the screen, and I was like, did I scratch it? I didn't, thankfully. Speaker performance on this, fantastic. Unlike any phone I've ever had, and the Note 10 Plus is great. And tomorrow I'll likely do a comparison of this to the Note 10 Plus because they're so similar in terms of hardware, other than the fact that the Note 10 Plus does not have any ability to fold and give us a tablet experience. And it doesn't need the extra cameras because its form factor is totally different. But the fact that, I will say, the fact that this phone makes me feel like the Note 10 Plus is rugged is a pitfall, obviously, for the product. I mean, as I said, not perfect. No, it is not. But is it something that any tech enthusiast is going to want as their daily driver if it doesn't fall apart? If it seems to work and the build quality is as good as it appears to be, and all of a sudden things don't start appearing under the screen, and the call quality and the speakerphone don't fall apart, I don't see how anyone could say no unless they're just hating on Samsung. I don't like to say hating on because that's like an idiot comment, but truth be told, that would be the only reason you would dislike this, is out of jealousy. And I'm not saying that the design is perfect, no, but it's first gen. I can hold this in my hand, candy bar style, and I can use this as a phone normally without looking like I'm putting a tablet to my head, and then all of a sudden I do have a tablet. This is a big achievement. A lot of people think this is a gimmick. As I said at the top of the video, no gimmick here. This is the real deal, but the durability is the question. And I don't ever, drop or take my phone into the pool or into the shower. So the waterproof issue I would like to have with this, but I understand, again, technological constraint. It's just not possible. Will it eventually be possible? I'm sure it will. Right here in first gen, it's not. So that's either a game breaker or not, just like being sensitive to the touchscreen. It's either a game breaker for you or it's not. For me, right now, I have to say I'm riding a high with this thing. There's no question. But this makes me forget about all of those things. And clearly, it's not going to do that for everyone. In fact, the price point is a non-starter. Most reviewers have said the price point is what makes this product DOA. That's dead on arrival for those of you unfamiliar. I completely disagree. As I said in my unboxing, those same reviewers were saying that iPhones couldn't sell for $1,000. And they sell for well over that. They never thought Samsung would make phones for over $1,000. $1,000 is the new normal, and not even for top of the line, but for base flagship. So is it really that expensive? And I'm not saying $2,000 isn't a lot. You could buy a beautiful laptop for $2,000. Not the one I would want, but very close. Get a very nice desktop computer. But this is your daily driver. And if this can be my daily driver, then it is well worth spending an extra $500 on over another device that I cannot accomplish as much with as I can with this guy right here. Because this, realistically, is the two-in-one. It is the tablet and the phone without the tablet footprint. However, you do still have the weight. And I don't really think it's a big deal. You know, I care when cameras get too heavy because that'll impact my back. This is not going to hurt my back. So it's all a matter of personal preference. This was a long update, but so far I'm really impressed with this thing. It is the next generation. It is not a gimmick. This is where things are going. That's why other companies are manufacturing foldable phones. And I'm just happy that Samsung did not quit on this after the problems they experienced when they tried to launch back in April. And hopefully, I won't be doing another video about problems that they missed or problems that they didn't solve with the redesign of the screen protection, you know, bringing the screen protector, the plastic substrate all the way around so that people don't try to peel it off, or the redesign of the spine. Hopefully dust doesn't get under the screen, all of those things. But, you know, at first glance, this phone appears to be the perfect thing for the ladies just to drop in their, you know, their pocketbook. But we know they can't do that because it might get damaged. We know that it'll destroy your credit cards. So, and then if you do have an implant of any sort, a medical implant, they said in the instructions, consult your doctor. So those are real things. For a second, I'm not going to pretend those are not issues. They're issues. But this phone isn't meant for everybody. We're not there yet. In 5 years, I think we'll be there. It could even be 3 years. By Gen 2, we could be there. Because I don't know how much they invested in this, but I know it was a lot. And I know that the margins on this at $2,000 are nothing, nowhere near how fat the margins are on phones like the Note 10 Plus that many of you are using, or an iPhone 11, or an iPhone 10, or whatever phone you already use that's a flagship. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.